time is 7:02 p.m. On Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. I'd like to call this Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting to order. We would like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, whose presence here continues to this day. Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge and thank them for sharing this land with us. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Okay, we move on to approval of the agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated by Legislative Services?
Matthew.
Joanne.
Okay, I heard Matthew there. Thanks, Matthew. And Joanne, I'll use you as a second. Are there any questions or comments on the agenda? Okay, I'll call the vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Okay, so there are no declarations of pecuniary interest. So may I have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of March 9th, 2022?
On Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. And a second?
John.
Thanks, John. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. We have no delegations this evening, which brings us to our matters for consideration. First item up is 7.1, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application SPM 2022-01. This is submission number 1 for 306 St. John's Side Road. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Joanne.
Thanks, Joanne. And a second?
Matthew.
All right, thanks, Matthew. Okay, Matt, if you want to take the lead on this then.
I will. Thank you, Madam Chair. So what we're going to be taking a look at over here is an application off of St. John's Side Road for St. Anne's School. This is actually there is a building there. They're renovating the majority of it in order to have some additions, including parking and some of the other areas. So we'll go through it in great detail. So this is probably the one that's going to take us the most time tonight. There's quite a bit to review over here. So as I'm going through each of the floors, if you guys want to stop me and kind of ask questions about a particular level, there's going to be 3 different ones that we're looking at. Just jump in and let me know where to stop and we can discuss. So I'll give you an overview like we normally do through each of the different pages, and we'll go over some of the accessibility concerns that came up during this site plan application. So before we actually go into the specifics, this is just a roadmap showing you the layout of where the work is being done. So as you can see, we have, for those of you that are familiar, the St. John's area there where St. Andrews College is, they have like the long roadways kind of leading up. And so as you can see over here, there's going to be 2 different entrance points into this school area. You're going to have one following my mouse over here directly into the school, and then they have a secondary roadway over here to it looks like a roundabout that then provides access over to a back entrance to the school as well. So there's going to be 3 parking lots that we're looking at. We are going to have one with on-street parking directly leading into the main entrance of the building itself. There is a 47 parking spot lot over here towards the front entrance as well. And then I believe the back one where we had a parking lot had about 12 spots. So we'll review all of those together and then we'll go through the actual inside of the site plan as well. So here's a little bit more of a detailed review of the actual parking lots. So as you can see, like I was mentioning, we have a 47-person parking spot over here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit more clearly the on-street parking that exists as well. So you can see they have 10 parking spots as well for on-street that lead into the main entrance. And then towards the rear of the building where you see there's like the Phase A portables, there's about 12 spots that are being allocated here as well. In terms of the actual parking lot, you'll notice in my memorandum for comments, they do have to adjust the size of the parking spots. So for example, in the 47-person spot, they indicated that the type A spot should be 3,400 millimeters, but it has to comply with the town zoning bylaw here, right? So that would be 3,650. They have to adjust for their type A spots. And then the 2,700 is correct for the type B spots. Now, in the comments as well, so what I believe the developers decided to do here, from when I was taking a look at this, oh, excuse me, trying to zoom out here, but it's zooming in. There we go. What I believe they were trying to do here is they provided 2 spots according to the number that would allocate towards 47, but they distributed it between the on-street parking lot and the off-street parking lot. So just so you guys know, in the legislation, on-street parking, so the one where they designated 1 spot over here towards the main entrance of the building, does not count towards off-street parking lots. So legitimate parking lots, if they have 47 spots, they would have to allocate accessible and barrier-free parking according to the number that's there. So they will have to add an additional barrier-free parking over here in the 47-person lot. One of the other comments as well is just to make sure that they're adjusting. Now, one of the things we can discuss here, they don't really show the distances. That would be more ideal. But I did mention there to ensure that the barrier-free parking is on the shortest path to the main entrance. So there are 2 ways for the barrier-free path. This parking spot and the additional that they have to add will either be associated over here in this top left corner, where we do have a cross to the main entrances over here, or I think more ideally, again, it would come down to distances. There can be the 2 spots added over here by this curb depression, where again, they have a crosswalk allocated, and it seems to be a little bit more direct and a more simple path to the main entrance. They don't have to go around all these curves and going all the way around the spots and then crossing the street over here, where you have a little bit more traffic in the pickup drop-off zone. So my gut instinct is I would imagine that they're going to do it a little bit closer to the crosswalk over here where my mouse is hovering. But if the distance does come up shorter based on their mathematics, then ideally they would place it over here in the other corner that I was showing you guys. So we will see that, or you guys will see that on a submission too, where they move that over based on the comments that we've provided over there. This barrier-free parking spot over here on the on-street parking spot it looks like they've provided 2 type A spots, and they do also have, as you can see, an access aisle built in specifically for those that lead into, it looks like they've chosen to do some kind of interlocking stone leading into the building that we have there as well. So we will have 2 spots in the parking lot, 2 spots located on the on-street parking lot. And then towards the back of the building, you can see that they've added in a type B spot, which will most likely stay a type B. And that one is good for the 12 spots. So based on the regulation, having the 1 barrier-free parking spot over there amongst the 11 normal spots is good to go there. So I imagine this should look pretty much the same. And then they'll just probably change around a little bit of the design over here in the 47-person parking spot. Any questions about that before we kind of move into the actual building itself?
Joanne has one.
Mm-hmm.
I just, since we're accessibility committee, and since we have, we're trying to clear up issues and things that happen to individuals that have, a considerable problem or even a small problem, why is 1 barrier-free parking spot required for 12 spot parking and only 2 required for 47?
So the way in the legislation, the way they built it is in ranges. So up to 12 spots, they require 1 type A spot to be provided. If they're going anything above it, they have it in zones. So I believe the next one was something like 13 spots to, I think it was 100 off the top of my head. They allocate 4% of whatever that number is in that parking lot to barrier-free parking. And then as it extends, it changes. So I think it was from like 101 spots all the way up to 200. It was 3% plus 1 barrier-free parking spot. And then it continues in those different allocations. I don't have it in front of me, but that's how they decide how many barrier-free parking spots go into each of these different facilities or parking lots.
To me, it doesn't make much sense. If they have one for 12, they should have four for 47, because it should be four. Then it would be 40 for 48.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. That's whoever came up with the legislation. Those are the numbers they came up with, right? So that's where we have our obligations to play around with. Obviously, as a committee, you guys are more than welcome to recommend additional if you feel like it. In this setting, it is a school. Not a lot of the students are going to be parking in there. So we're really thinking mostly staff, teachers, janitors that would be using the majority of these spots. So if you feel like there should be additional designated barrier-free parking spots, more than happy to throw those in there, but that would be for you guys to discuss based on, like I said, legislative standards. That's what they would have to add. That's what I put in the memorandum. And then I'm more than happy to listen into your comments on anything additional. Okay. So no other comments. So we'll continue moving along here. So in the next couple of slides, we're going to go into detail showing the actual building itself. Before we go in there, I'll show you the path of travel coming in from the main parking lots here. So as we were showing, we have two crosswalks that lead into the two exterior paths of travel that lead around the pickup and drop off zone. Leading into the building, there's going to be two main different entrances. So as you guys can see where my mouse is hovering, there are two inaccessible, there's one fully inaccessible entrance over here. This isn't into a main entrance, right? So there's one over here where there's just stairs based on how I read the site plan. The next spot in the middle over here has stairs and a ramp. So right over here where my mouse is hovering, this little white area leading into the middle of the building is a ramp that leads into the main entrance. And in my memorandum, you will see that I comment on it, but we'll go into those details shortly. And then lastly, you do have a level entrance over here that leads into the left wing of this building as well. So there's three different entrances leading into various parts of this school zone. And then lastly, from the portable area, you can see that there is a path of travel that leads towards the back of the building that you can enter in as well. So there's four main designated entrances to lead into different parts of the school. Alrighty, so now we're going to be looking at, this is the lower level. So I'm going to skip over one slide here. So Joanne, skip one more page. We're going to be taking a look at the level one entrance first, because that's what we were just taking a look at as we were speaking. So it makes more sense to start off over there. Alrighty, so for the main entrance, we'll start off from where people are going to be entering into the school. So some of the comments that I meant over here are for the ramp. As you can see over here, they have 1500 millimeters designated for a diameter as the main entrance into the ramp. So that would have to be increased, and the actual slope, which on one of the other slides, you'll see it as well, needs to be adjusted. So the ramp over here requires bigger platforms for the entrance, as well as a turning radius over here leading up to the main entrance of the building. So this ramp will be adjusted in the second submission that you guys will be receiving down the road. And then as well as, I believe, this slope over here, I asked them to take a look at and see if we can reduce it as well. So this is the one where people are not going to be able to access it because of the staircase that's located on the bottom. Food for thought is we could reach out to the developer and see if there's an additional ramp that could be put over here next to the trees, right? Because these are new trees that are being added in here. So it's not like they're removing anything. So that's something we can consider as a ramp to be added in here as well. So that way this outdoor area is usable right out of coming out of the pickup drop-off zone. And then, yeah, like I said, there is a ramp that leads up through the stone area over here. And then you have a couple of entrances into the buildings. And this is also the entrance that leads right to the back. So you can see that there's a landscaped area towards the rear of the school that this entrance would lead towards. So I think there is some beneficial opportunities for us to add in a ramp here. So I'll pause there before I continue into the building. Is that something the committee would want to consider? Or are you okay with the two main entrances that already are considered to be accessible leading into the school?
Matt, so can you just say again, that's where you're proposing that new ramp? It goes up into, is it like, I'm having trouble understanding what that space is. It's just like an outdoor paved, like Like,
It looks like
basically-
just kind of like a common space outdoors. They've labeled it as what it looks like here, outdoor maker space. So I don't know what that means.
yeah, I didn't
But
know what
it
that
does
meant
look like
either, so.
Yeah, it looks like just like a space to kind of get together, and they'll probably use it for a variety of things, but there is no designated, from what I see on the site plan, nothing that it's designated for. It just looks like kind of like an open patio that's outside of the school.
But if then there is an accessible ramp then up top there, why, it doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, how are you gonna access that ramp if you can't go up to the main?
So that's
Section.
through the building, right? So those other two main entrances that are accessible, people would be going and using those as the main entrances into the school. And then there is a
Okay.
path that I'll show you as we go through the interior that leads to the doors that are on this barrier-free entrance that leads to the back. So there is a direct route that leads to the landscaping in the back of the building. It's just not through this staircase, this third entrance that we're highlighting here right now.
Okay, I would put my vote in for, suggesting the ramp in front there, because I don't like the idea that it's seemingly like a workaround, some kind of weird
Yep.
backdoor way. I think just add the extra ramp. That would be my 2 cents.
Just to make this easy, does anyone disagree?
Sounds good to me.
Perfect. So I've put that in there and we will make that comment. Okay, dokes. So going back to the main entrance. So there are 2 different entrances. We will start off with the main entrance. So in terms of accessibility, we have the crosswalk that leads over to the stone over here. Anyone that requires access through motorized devices, wheelchairs, would be using this ramp to get up to over to the main entrance. Like I was mentioning, platforms need to be adjusted and the slope does need to be adjusted. It was a little bit too steep. So that will be adjusted on the ramp leading into the main entrance. From the main entrance, we have our vestibule, which will then lead to, Rochelle, the question that you were asking. So leading in through the main entrance over here, we have the main halls. And this hallway over here, as you kind of follow my mouse, I know I say this every time, I wish I had a pointer to show you guys a little bit more clearly. But through these doorways leading in, you'll see that there is a path that leads into the barrier-free ramp that goes towards the back of the building. So that's how they've kind of loopholed an opportunity for people to be able to access that back area. So there is an area through here, but we will make that comment in order to provide an additional ramp down from the outdoor makerspace, whatever that is. In the building, once you enter in, from the vestibule, you have there's quite a bit on the main floor. You have your reception and security area immediately towards the front. There seems to be a student shop. There is a universal washroom very close over to the main entrance. It's available, as well as an office leading towards, I think this is the west side, it's left. So we're going to consider this west for the sake of our conversation. The hallway leads down to a common area. And then you can see towards the north side, we have a cafe and a lecture theater. So for the lecture theater and some of the different halls that are located on the different floor, we did request for assistive devices to be added in there. So that way there is induction loops for people with hearing impairments. And then as we progress through the rest of this building, there is an elevator that leads through the main 3 floors. So it's a little bit to the left of the building, but there is an actual elevator that leads up to the lower level as well as the upper levels in the school. And then they have an additional entrance over here, which is the most western one, right next to the executive assistant and head office. They have a multi-purpose room and a dining room and a meeting room. So that's the main floor. Any questions about this portion of it before we kind of jump to the other floors?
I do.
Yep, good.
Yeah, so just apologies if this is clear and I'm just not, but it's all one level, right? This main floor, there's no like little different levels that require ramps or little weird elevator lift thingies. It's all one level, right?
From my understanding, from the way I've read this, it does appear that way. So you can see like where my mouse is currently hovering right above, looks like staircase C and staircase B. There is some level changes, but based on this isn't a graded floor plan for the interior, but it looks like all of this is connected without any staircases. So it does appear that way. So I can't say with
Okay.
100% certainty, but based on what I'm looking at here, I think so.
Okay, and then my second question is the elevator, because this was an existing house, I believe, right? So I
Yeah,
presume that the elevator is going to be like a brand new install. It's not like some like rickety lift. Again, I hate the idea of the lifts, like the key access lifts. So I just want to make sure, because I know so many schools use those types of things, and I hope it's going to be a proper, modern regular elevator.
I know when I visited like their sister school, like St. Andrew's College, it was a proper elevator.
Yeah.
So they
Okay.
put good money into their schools.
Okay.
So I can't imagine they're going to save a couple bucks on by buying a lift instead of an elevator.
Okay, but I guess
Yeah.
there's no indication here in the site plan that actually like indicates that clearly. It's just we're assuming, I guess.
If we can go, let's go back. So on this one in the red, it's showing what they're working on, and it looks like the entire existing house is being kind of worked in. So yes, I would concur with what Matthew is mentioning. I don't think they're going to be saving a couple bucks here and there, and I think that'll be a full elevator that's being added in for that portion.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
Great. Any other questions on this main floor area? Okay, so we're going to jump back up a page. So Joanne, you're going to flip back one page, and we're going to take a look at the lower level. So this is only access, well, you can access it through stairs. Yep.
I had a question. I just think my mic wasn't working.
Okay, going back. Yep.
Is that sunken entrance? Is that stairs into the second entrance?
Okay, so we're looking at administrative entrance or main entrance?
So the administrative entrance.
Yeah, okay.
Is it stairs in the front?
This area over here?
Yeah, it looks like there's like two. I'm just worried because it would be pretty big, and if there's a fire or safety for someone with accessibility issues to get all the way around to the front, which is seems to be the only accessible exit, could be an issue.
You might be right that this actually is staircase, because this to me appears like they are.
Yeah, it looks similar to how they've done the other staircases, and it just means, right, there's no second accessible exit in that side of the building, which could be an issue if there's a fire or something.
Let's jump back to this page.
Yeah, that's a good point, Haley, actually.
Yeah, I think I'm assuming that you're correct here, that based on this arch, that it does look like a staircase here. So then we would probably recommend it. Good catch. So I think we would recommend it for all entrances, not just the main entrance. Like if there's a possibility for this, because they already have the platform built over here. So if they can have the additional ramp kind of lead in. I will say, looking at this space, I don't know that they'll have enough for the proper slope leading into that entrance. So I don't know if they physically can add that in. I'll put the comment in for sure, but looking at it, I don't think they'll have enough room to do it properly. For sure on the outdoor makerspace, if they kind of build into this landscaping area, they will be able to add it in a ramp, but this administrative section, I'm not too sure that there's enough space, but we can add that comment in. That's not an issue. Good catch.
Yeah. Even just looking on that side, there doesn't seem to be like it's all stairs, like it's a sunken garden. How are individuals going to enter the garden, the field? It doesn't seem to be any accessibility on that side of the building from the very second you were there.
Yeah, let me jump back. This one.
Like
Yes, the sunken garden here.
There's a stairs there. It shows no exit that's accessible, really.
I believe it's this portion right here that they have the door into the sunken garden.
But how do you add?
Through the building, yeah. From the outdoor perspective, yes, you're right that these are all staircases leading into it. You'd have to lead into from the actual building itself, it looks like. But let's confirm that looking at it as well.
Because like to me, a sunken garden means there's a level difference from the main level. So then there would be a difference in level somewhere where there would have to be stairs or something to access that.
Yeah, and it looks like even over here for the sunken garden, where they're even like, yeah, existing doors to be sealed shut, it says. So it looks like they're not even going to keep those doors.
So yeah,
Oh, that's on level 2. Let's go back to level 1. And here, they're converting this into a staircase area. There's a meeting room. This looks like just a window. So I'm not seeing an accessible entrance into that either. And yeah, they have the staircases here, staircases. Yeah, so it doesn't look like they should ramp it as well into the actual sunken garden. Good catch. Ramp to. Okay, perfect. Good catch, Haley. Alrighty. All good points. Anything else on the main floor before we jump to the lower level?
Can I just ask again, there was only the one washroom there that you pointed out on that main level, right?
Universal, yes. There are
Okay.
additional washrooms, but there was one universal washroom.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it's right over here by the main entrance.
Okay,
And they have additional ones on the administrative entrance side over here.
okay.
But it looks like they're just indicating it as a water closet, so it's not going to be a universal washroom.
Mm-mm.
Okie dokes. We're going to jump over to the lower level next. So on the lower level, looking in from the elevator coming down for us, you're going to have the games room. And see, like I said, this is the door that I think we're looking for, Haley. But on the other one, I think maybe it was for the level 2. They were saying they're going to close it off. So either way, I think there should be an external entrance to be able to access the garden as well, not just through the building, similar to the point that we were making for the ramp for the outdoor makerspace. So we'll leave that comment in. But like I said, it looks like from the games room that there is access to the actual outdoor garden here.
well, I think just right for safety, if they have to clear the building, you need to get so much distance away. They need to be able to exit externally.
Well, especially if you're on the lower level and let's say the elevator doesn't work, you're right. If you get out to the garden, it's like, how do you then lead out from the garden, right? You're kind of stuck in there. Yep.
Trapped
So
in the sunken garden.
Yeah, right. So from the games room, we have a couple of different areas. There's a private dining area. There's a broadcast and journalist room. They have another theater down in the basement. Again, the comment that I mentioned for the assistive technology for individuals with hearing impairment would gear towards that as well. I'm looking at, yeah, so they have a vestibule entrance into the theater over here. And then it looks like they have an existing staircase that they're keeping over here that leads onto the stage. And then there is an accessible stage access point. If you follow my mouse here through the main stair hallway, you have an additional vestibule on the right side here that then leads into the actual stage. Now, I wonder if these boxes are lifts or not. It doesn't indicate, but from what I understand here, it looks like this doorway just leads onto the stage directly, and then there's staircases to lead down to the theater floor as well. From there, going a little bit north into the building, there is a water closet. This is not a universal washroom. There's a viewing gallery leading further up. They have an exercise room, a couple of showers, and additional washrooms, and then they have their actual gymnasium over here. And then they have a couple of just smaller pieces that wouldn't really concern for us, but they have a mechanical room, IT server room, additional rooms that again are not going to be accessed by any of the students. So it's pretty bare bones down in the basement area. It's pretty much just gymnasium, change rooms, exercise rooms, games room, journalist, and theater area that we would be taking a look at. There is, I think, the opportunity for us to have them consider adding a universal washroom rather than having this kind of like a double entrance into this specific hallway. If they kind of cut this down into maybe one door and they extend that washroom, there might be the possibility for them to be able to fit in a universal washroom. And even if they wanted to keep it that way, if they move this wall down into like the master hall area, they should be able to fit in a universal washroom. So I would suggest that might be an additional comment that we add in for this specific floor. Any other comments or concerns for this specific area?
I'm wondering, I can't really tell. Do they plan to have any of the showers and stuff in the change room accessible? Like any space in there?
Sorry, I'm just writing down the universal comment. For the washrooms, so in Ontario Building Code, you're going to have all your accessibility features usually in that universal washrooms. Like you're talking like actual proper railings, buttons, change tables, all of that will come along with the universal washrooms. Anything in a water closet will be your basic. So you're looking at pretty much urinals, toilets, anything along those lines. So that's why I think it's better for us to recommend that water closet be converted to universal washrooms. So that way you get those features in there.
Well, no, because I was wondering if you said they had showers and stuff. Like, is any of the showers going to be accessible? I couldn't tell because you weren't far enough in.
Showers, they're not indicating anything. It looks like they just have a door leading into the shower, but it doesn't say anything about accessible features in there. But that's something we can just add in, right? Just into the comments. So I can add that piece in there. Okay. Any other comments for the lower level before we go up to the second floor? Okie dokes. Alrighty. And on the second floor, let's take a look. So again, we'll start from the elevator area. Up here is pretty much mostly classroom learning areas, but they do have a couple of offices towards the side, but we'll follow through that together. So coming in from the elevator, we have a couple of classrooms. They have a learning commons area over here, additional classroom towards the bottom, as well as the north part. They do have an existing balcony that has doorways that lead into them. In our comments, we do have for all public access locations to have the barrier-free door operators, so that would be included in that. Again, it doesn't appear like they threw in a universal washroom upstairs. So I was taking a look at this one. I don't specifically see an area for them to be able to add one in. It looks like they just basically have your general washrooms with multiple stalls in them, but I didn't see much of a potential for them to add in that universal washroom. So again,
Matt, the top stall on the set of washrooms looks like it's universal.
So it's those accessible stalls, right? But it's not going to have
accessible. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not going to have like your change tables, like a universal washroom. It's not
yeah,
going to
sorry, I
have
missed
like the
that.
buttons. So yes, they do have an enlarged stall, but they're not going to be a fully accessible washroom in that sense. So that's why I was wondering if the committee would like to push for one on each floor. I kind of like to on schools because I mean, like these are students that are coming in here every day. So I think it's maybe a comment that we throw in there, but I do think they'll probably come back saying that there isn't enough room for that specific one. So let me know your guys' thoughts on that.
I mean, I think it would be good to have, but as I'm looking at the plan, I really don't see where they would put it.
Yeah. I think if we put that comment in, just be genuine with you guys, I think it'll fall on deaf ears just because there's nowhere to put it, right? So I think this might be one that we just pass on because there's just nowhere to add it in. Minus that, if no one's going to comment on that piece, we can get back to it. But if we continue along with the hallway, there's an additional office, and you can see that they have a link between the buildings on the second floor that leads into a music room. So I didn't have any comments for the music room, but I knew Haley would be in the meeting. So I don't know if there's something that would be good to kind of add in as comments in terms of features for a room such as this. So I'm curious.
So it really depends on the design. Some music rooms are tiered. It doesn't look like they plan to have this one as a tiered room, but sometimes they do that. Storage room, making sure, because that's often where they store the instruments and they often just tell the students to go get it and stuff. So that looks, if that's what their plan is for this music, for the storage room, that does not look like it would be very accessible.
Is there anything, I'm assuming they put in like acoustics and stuff into these rooms, right? So I am assuming that wouldn't really be something for us to worry about in this one, but I'm not sure.
Not always.
Okay, so that might be something for us to add in as well, as just acoustics.
They sometimes add in a few, but not really to the accessibility standards that we would
Right.
hope that wouldn't kill people's ears.
Yep. Okay.
I have a
Any
question,
other-
Matt.
Yep.
Will they in like the main sort of common areas like music room or a gymnasium or I don't know, I didn't see a library yet unless I've missed it. Those types of big sort of hall spaces, are they going to have the push buttons on the doors? Because they really should, so that for accessibility, if a student or a staff member needs to get in, they don't have to rely on someone holding the door open.
So the answer is they don't need to. So the way the code works is it's for all public access locations. So hallways, for example, passive travel between room to room, yes.
Mhm.
Into designated rooms, no, they don't need to. So we always put the comment in, like I said, for all public locations, and like I kind of lump in all of that into there, like all of them should, and that's what we were talking about even in our accessibility plan, is like all of our program rooms, add buttons to those as well, because what's the point of being able to get through the halls if you can't enter into the room itself, right?
Exactly.
So the answer is they don't have to, but
Can we
in our
request
case,
it?
yeah, of course.
I mean, I maybe not for every room, like maybe not all the classrooms or whatever, but certainly in those common areas where people will be gathering, or a student may want to go to the library or the gym or whatever and not have to bring an attendant to access the door.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'll specify with more detail on that for sure. That's not an issue.
I would highly look at, for sure, the music room. Often those doors are much heavier to try to insulate the
Right. Yep. All the clanging.
It's very loud, the music room.
Perfect. Okay, and then the last room I'll show you here, whoops. They have an attic space, but no students or anything is going to be coming up there. They don't have anything specific. So if we zoom in over here, you'll see in the attic area, they have a mezzanine attic space, but nothing for the students to kind of be going through. So nothing for us to take a look at in great detail over here. And then from there, elevation drawings, but yeah, so I will quickly run through my notes because I know we were kind of chatting there. I want to make sure I got all of them. So just to go through the memorandum. So like I said, automatic door openers for all public access locations. Rochelle, I've added in the notes just to kind of be a little bit more specific about some of these classrooms and more common areas for them to be using. There was a note in there as well for installation of proper tactile indicators at the staircases. And then in the consideration section, I always include that Max's favorite comments about having the evacuation chairs considered in there as well. We spoke about the barrier-free parking spots. We spoke about the ramp. We spoke about the cafe and the theater for having accessible tables and induction loops. And then the last point that I didn't mention as we were speaking through, but for the customer service counters, just to ensure that there is an accessible, allocated accessibility spot to be put in there. And then, like I said, in the considerations comments, you'll see that I have the universal washroom we provide on each level. So hopefully, as we were discussing, they at least comment back to us in the second submission on that piece. Anything else? I have all of your comments written down. Is there anything else you guys want to add in before we move on to the next submission? Okay, Madam Chair, they're all yours.
Okay, so if there are no further comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that carries. That brings us to item 7.2, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application SPEX 2022-02. This is submission number 1 for 15900 Bayview Avenue. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Haley.
John.
Thanks, John. And Haley, I'll use you for the second. All right, if you want to.
Okay, so this is our annual review of Loblaws adding in their gardening center. So this will be very quick. Has anyone actually gone and used it and kind of seen it after, like, we make our comments, and whether they've kind of caught any issues? Because their comments for this are always pretty basic. So for the comments, I asked for temporary barrier-free parking to be added outside of the garden center for them to be able to get a little bit closer. And then
Which they didn't do last year.
you wish they didn't do it last year?
They didn't do it last year.
Yeah, so they don't have to, right? So these are the comments that we throw in for the temporary parking. They don't have to, because it's just a temporary piece being added in there. And then for the actual garden center itself, we request for ensuring that they have the 1.5 clearance. In their drawings this year, they did indicate that they have, it looks like 3 meter space between all of the corridors. I put it in anyway, just because these additional areas in the tent don't designate like what the distance is, but it all looks pretty close to the 3 meters that they've indicated on these hallways. So those are the 2 comments that I added in. There isn't too much more to add in. Like I said, this is just a garden center they're putting in there, but do you ever go through it, Matthew? Was there any issues that you kind of noticed? I see Haley nodding her head, so that's good. So from your experiences actually going through there, what else could be improved?
I think I find the biggest thing is, yes, they might say 3 meters, but oftentimes then they're adding carts there, or they're adding, like, they pay no attention to where they're putting anything.
Yep.
So yes, the stable things that don't move might be 3 meters, but the stuff is actually not distance. Like, I find it's very tight to move around.
They put plants along the side of the in that 3 meter gap.
Yeah.
And so they'll put like little planters along the sides on below on the ground, because they get so much product in so quickly that they put it anywhere they can put it.
Okay.
So it's not 3 meters. Last year they actually had so much product and not enough space that I saw the fire inspector was there one day and giving them a scolding eye and saying you didn't do it right. So
that's a good comment to put in there. So it's not anything based on legislation, but it's a comment that we'll put in there basically to ensure that they're not using that 3 meter space as storage or interference with the actual barrier-free path of travel. So that's good. Anything else?
I think the other thing, which is hard to deal with, but also something that they could be cognizant of, is the hose for when they're watering. Because oftentimes, even if
Left on the floor?
It's just left on the floor, you're tripping on it,
Yeah.
like, no thought about where it is.
Got it. Don't you all look back to when we were kids, though, and doing the exact same thing and leaving things thoughtlessly? Perfect.
They're
Okay.
still doing it.
Still doing it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All the generations will continue doing it. It'll never change. You know, they want to come in, water it, leave it. Perfect. Those are both good comments. Anything else? Sorry, Joanne?
No, I was just going to say they're children, and sometimes they never grow up.
Nope. Yep. I'm so partially there too. I haven't really grown up either.
Neither have I. It's okay.
Yeah, you got to live as a kid sometimes still, right?
no, the garden center is pretty much temporary. So
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So those are good additional comments. I'll throw those in there as well. So Rochelle, we can probably jump to the next one.
Okay, so if there are no questions or comments, I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries. All right, item 7.3, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application OPA 2022-02 and ZBA 2022-02, submission number 1, and this is for 1289 Wellington Street East. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Haley.
Thanks,
Joanne,
Haley.
Joanne,
And Joanne for a second. Thank you very much. Okay, Mad, take it away.
Thank you very much. So I believe this is, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on here, but I believe this is going to be the intersection of Wellington and Leslie, where they're going to be adding this piece in. So quite a busy area. So they're going to be proposing a 7-story apartment here, and they're going to be adding in a couple of actual townhouse blocks as well. So let's take a look at this together. We had a couple of comments, nothing too crazy or outstanding, but let's take a look together here. So yeah, this is I do remember this one. Yes, the Wellington and Leslie. So it's going to be a very congested intersection with all the gas stations and these houses being added in with the highway and everyone turning toward the highway there as well. So this is going to be quite busy. Okay. In terms of comments, a lot of them are going to be your basic ones. So I requested automatic door openers for all of the public entrances. Taking a look at the way this is designed, you can see that the actual 7-story units are what's facing Wellington Street over here on the north side of the specific plaza. And then it goes along the east side connected to Leslie as well. And so it looks like they are adding in sidewalk. They've been doing construction there forever. So it looks like they are going to have some sidewalk areas here with a crosswalk, not a crosswalk, but a split over here between building A and building B in order to kind of access the road. And then I'm sure all of us are quite aware, but there is the obviously intersections that lead over to the north side of Wellington that lead over to the Stronach and then the plazas that are up that hill. But then there is not much else other than probably sidewalk that they're going to connect over to. I think those are the Magna homes that were built over there, the little gated community that will probably have the sidewalk connection lead down over there. In terms of entrance into the majority of these homes, you have a gatehouse road that leads in to both the townhouses and the actual buildings themselves. The entrance into the garage is on the south side. So over here on Leslie, people can either drive through from the Wellington entrance or they can enter in from Leslie. You can see that there's a ramp that leads into the underground parking lot, and we'll take a look at that shortly. In terms of barrier-free parking, this one was a little bit interesting because they have added a couple. So you can see by building A, for example, they have a type A spot with its access aisle that is, in all technicality purposes, closest to. You can see that there is a big barrier-free path of travel between all of these townhouses. And then they have an additional one located over here that again leads to these different blocks. But I guess I want to complain about it, but I don't know quite how to complain about it. There isn't just much great versatility in terms of traveling through the specific area. There's always going to be a need basically to use a crosswalk to enter onto an exterior path of travel, to not stay on a roadway, to go along to the other part of this subdivision where, again, they have provided the legal crosswalks to then enter onto another exterior path of travel to reach these other blocks. But like I said, it has all the access points. It just doesn't look that great in terms of being able to park and then go to a barrier-free path of travel to kind of make your way around the specific subdivision. But what are your thoughts? So like I said, you can see there's crosswalks leading between every single one of these sidewalks. All these connection points, including the trail over here behind the townhouses, they are all interconnected. Are you guys okay with the location of these barrier-free parking spots? I think the alternative is for them to be closer, like you can see over here, right next to the path of travel. And yeah, so I made that comment in here for the outdoor barrier-free parking to be relocated, but I wanted to make sure that you guys agree with this point, with them being a little bit closer to the path travel of block 3, 4, and 5, because even from there, it's also easier to get to an exterior path of travel. Over here where they placed it, you can see like, not only do they have to cross the road, but there's no actual curb depression into the sidewalk, it doesn't look like. Plus is a drop-off area. So if there's cars there, obviously they can't get through that. So would you agree with us just moving the spots over? I don't know if there's anything else that you guys would really want to comment in terms of like the visitor barrier-free parking for that area. Okay.
Matt, are there any spots in the underground that are barrier free?
I believe so. So yeah, we'll take a look shortly, but I'm pretty sure there was. I haven't looked at this one in a little while. So we'll get there shortly. Okay, so I'm hearing no comments. If we want to get back to that, it's okay. So I'll just kind of go through this quickly before we move into the interior drawings. So the exterior path of travel does lead around all of the buildings, as you can see where my mouse is hovering, from building A to building B, all the way down to building C. They provided crosswalks to intersect between all pretty much exterior paths of travel. So there is an accessible route to each of these areas. Towards the south side over here, they do have a crosswalk that leads to, it looks like kind of like a small conservation area. So they have a path of travel that leads through behind all of these building blocks. And they've just kind of added in some landscaping and some conservation area. I don't remember, I'm assuming that they're using gravel for this, but forgive me, I don't remember what they used as the actual material for the path of travel here. But I can double check that tomorrow. And if there's, but either way, they're most likely going to be using gravel. I highly doubt they decided to use asphalt over here for this specific area. Now, that is something we could comment on. It is a fairly short conservation area. So I think that's something we could gun for over here, which is making them actually use asphalt here versus just gravel to make sure that it's fully accessible and a little bit easier to travel through. So what are your thoughts on that?
That sounds good.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
It also doesn't look like there's any, I know, again, my eyes suck. But it doesn't look like there's any rest spots along that path.
I added that in there, Haley. Okay. So leading into the actual building. So we are taking a look at, it looks like this is the lower level parking. So let's start off at the first level. So yeah, here's the accessible parking on the inside, John. So there are the two ramp entrances. There was a south, we'll call it south entrance. This is close to Leslie that you lead into. So you can see that they do have two barrier-free parking spots right next to the elevator over here. And then from the north entrance, from Wellington, there are two additional barrier-free parking spots, both a type A and a type B. That is also right next to an elevator. Minus that, on the actual, whoops, wrong way. On the lower level parking lot, P2, they didn't add any barrier-free parking, which I didn't comment on because I prefer it to be on P1 regardless. So my question to the committee for today is whether or not they'd like to have additional barrier-free parking spots added. So they only indicated, it looks like 4 spots for this entire building. So I'm assuming yes, that we do want additional ones. It's, I guess, how many we want added in on top of this. So just so you guys know the numbers, on the P1 level, there's 368 spots. And then, keep clicking the wrong way, sorry guys. And then on the P2 level, they have another 493 spots, it looks like. So lots of room. Any thoughts on that? So with when it's residential like this, sorry, go ahead, Joanne.
And how many spots do they have allotted then?
They only have 4, but so what I was going to comment and the reason why, for residential parking spots, it's not considered an off-street parking lot, right? It's like a visitor parking area. So that's why there is no rule for how many spots that we go in with that. Excuse me. But we could follow legislative standard and kind of use that as our way, right? So like treat it as an off-street parking lot. We almost have about 1,000 spots. We could use that percentage scale in order to allocate an appropriate amount of barrier-free parking. So that was my thought, but I didn't put it into the comments before chatting with you guys. I wanted to see what your thoughts are on that.
How many? Sorry.
So go ahead.
How many units are there? And how many extra spaces are down there?
I don't know how many units are in the building. It might be easier for you guys to take a look on the main page, but we can do a quick look here. Along the side, usually the site statistics are where we would see that. Block 2, unit 5, block coverage, height.
Unit up.
Townhouses.
They had, if you look over, they had the units, I think, listed.
These are you looking at the left side or the right side?
Right side if you go up.
Yeah, building area.
Building
They
name.
have units. Okay. 140 units in building A. Building B, they have 220, and then 180 in building C. So if anyone has a calculator handy, let's see.
They have the subtotal right there, Matt. 541.
Yeah, 541. So there's your answer. So they have quite a bit more spots down there than they do indicated for the actual units here.
So
And how many handicap parking?
There's only 4 barrier-free currently.
So what I would do is I would take into, because I know I just bought a pre-build in Newmarket, and I know they're selling, it's very much allocated like 1 spot for 1 unit. So I would look at maybe, rather than taking the full 1,000 and stuff, because not every unit would be used.
Right.
I would, maybe take a percentage of that and stuff, and then go off of the, if you know what I mean, the standard percentage for off-street parking. If that makes sense.
Yeah, using the 541 number instead of the like 1,000 number, and
of the parking lot. Yep, off the units.
Right.
Yep.
Because in any given unit, likelihood is you're not going to have need for 2 wheelchair accessible vehicles, right? I mean, in any given unit, you may have a need for 1. So yeah, I think going by the 541 number is good.
Works for me.
How are they advertising this building? Just a residence, or are they encouraging older people to go into these residences?
I don't know how they're advertising it. I just get the memo, and the memo here states the official plan here is submitted to planning. Okay, the applicant is proposing and established land use permissions to permit the development of a mixed residential development comprising of the 7-story building. So there's the 3 of them, the actual townhouse blocks, and these are all situated on private roads. And that's all I know, Joanne. So I don't know like how they're advertising it, whether it's, or like what population they're gearing it towards, but it's, it's condo plus townhouses.
I really have concerns because for one thing, our population is getting older. Naturally, things happen, like, for instance, myself, I was in the hospital for 2.5 months. And the thing is, some days I feel like I have to use my walker, and other days I don't. I have to use my cane. But the thing is, I would think that it's imperative for us to put in some of a good deal of those spots. As I say, because the generations are getting older, the people that are moving out of their houses are going into buildings like this.
Yep. So we will be using, based on the conversation, we'll be using the I think it was 541 units, and we'll definitely be adding additional spots. So this is all off the top of my head, but based off about 500, we're probably going to be looking at an additional probably 10 spots that we'd be adding in at least. onto this based on that number, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Good.
It should be around that based on 500 spots.
To me, that doesn't seem like enough, sorry.
Well, what's the consensus in the committee? I can't be the deciding factor.
I
on
know,
that
I
piece.
know, I know.
So
I know.
so I have Joanne that thinks it's not enough. Matthew, Rochelle, Haley, John, your thoughts?
Is this a condo? Because the
Yes.
condo board will pretty much determine whether or not they need more based on input from the residents, really?
Yeah.
So they may determine, say, we don't need the 4 spaces in the underground. We need that for the regular owners.
Which they can't remove unless they get permission from the town and our committee.
Yeah, through the site plan application process, they wouldn't be able to change anything unless it goes through this formally, correct?
So Matt.
Yep.
For 541, it's 3%. You said, right?
I think it's for that number. You're going to be looking, I think, at 2% plus 2 spots. Again, I don't have the legislation in front of me. I don't remember what it is. It changes for each of these ranges. I can. Here, to make it easy, let me tell you guys right now. Let me just unshare my screen. I can pop it up because I have it saved on my desktop very quickly here.
Because at 2% plus 2 would be basically 13 spots you would need. It's 12.82, so we'll round to the 13.
I personally would like to see us go to 15 spots.
Yeah, like whatever the number is in terms
Yeah.
of the math, we could just add a few more just to show how, you know, how much we think that they do need a lot more than they currently have.
Yeah, I would think 15 would be appropriate.
Bear with me 1 second, guys. Okay.
You know, when I go to a mall, I try not to go into the handicap spot unless I have to park a mile away from the building or something. And then I will use it. But I mean, I have full authority to use it because I have my permit. But I try to give it to other people who I know have less ability than myself. But anyway, I just think it's important.
Okay, so here we are. So for between 201 to 1,000 parking spaces, there is a requirement of 2 parking spaces and an additional 2%. So that's what that's what I said, right?
Yeah.
So for 541.
So math, you're looking at
times
13 spots.
Exactly. So yeah, so it's close. That was close. But yeah, so we're looking at 13 spots. So do you guys want to
take it to 15? Can we take it to 15?
It's up to you guys. If that's what you guys want, I will put that in.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
That only includes the building. That doesn't include the townhouses, right?
No, it does not. So they have the additional, we're not going to even count that towards the 15. We'll just say that's for the underground parking specifically, not including the ones they already have outside.
Yeah. No one likes the number 13 anyways.
That's true.
It's actually my lucky number.
Okay, perfect. So I have added that comment in, so that's good. And then there's no current interior drawings for us to take a look at for this building. So we were pretty much just looking at this purely on the underground parking and the exterior. So I think we're pretty much good on that. There wouldn't be too much more for us to comment on, unless there's something else that you guys would like to discuss for these pieces. So like the next couple of slides are just the actual elevations for the buildings, but there was no interior submissions for this provided.
Okay.
And yeah, these are just all the townhouses, just the marsh area in the back.
That's the same piece of land that had that fenced off trees for years. That
Yes.
one tree that was fenced
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
That was Frank's tree.
Was it?
Yeah, he said more or less, here's something that's struggling to survive and keeps on going, and it finally died.
Okay, so Rochelle, I think we're good for that. So I think we're going to be moving over to 7.4 next.
Okay, so with no further comments on that, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. And so we are on to 7.4, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application SP 2022-01, submission number 1, and this is for 115, 135, and 155 Addison Hall Circle. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Haley.
Thanks, Haley. In a second.
Joanne?
Thanks, Joanne. Okay, Matt, if you want to start us off on this?
Yep. So here we're taking a look at industrial buildings onto Addison Hall Circle. So we're quite familiar with that area. It's becoming quite the industrial building location. Not too many comments for this. Similar to most of these industrial locations that we're taking a look at, they're very simple in terms of how they're being structured and built. So in terms of the comments that I have included on the memorandum, they had to increase the actual exterior paths of travel to the minimum 1.5 meter expectation, so they weren't meeting that. In terms of additional comments past that, the only ones that I added in, so before I just show you the actual layout of this, was for additional barrier-free parking to be added in over here for these units at C10 and C11. And the reason is as we take a look at this area more wholesomely, they have added barrier-free parking fairly well distributed amongst all the other units. So if we're taking a look at this first section over here, proposed buildings for B and C, you can see units B, 9, and 10 have their allocated type A and type B spot. B4 and B5, same thing. And then across the street, C5 and C6, again, 2 barrier-free parking spots. And they just kind of lacked it on this side. Whereas on the opposite side, they provided it for units A7 and A8, as well as A4 and A5. So just to keep for consistency's sake, they don't technically, based on the requirements, need to add those barrier-free parking spots, but I requested it regardless, just because you could see the pattern they were providing, which makes sense, is to have a proper amount of barrier-free parking spots allocated amongst all of the units. So I asked for them to add those in for those units for C10 and C11, and then we should be good from there. Thoughts on that? Does that make sense with everyone? Does anyone disagree with that? Okay. And then from there was pretty much just basic comments. As you can see, there is a couple of entrances. So there is an entrance from First Commerce Drive into the fire route over here. It does not lead into the building B and C area. So it's just over here for units A to 13. And then you'd have to go in from Addison Circle over here for any of the trucks that are going to be coming into the backs of these industrial units. And then for anyone wanting to access units B's and C's, they'd be coming in from Addison Hall. And there is an exterior path of travel leading into all of these units. So there's one over here on Addison Circle for an exterior path of travel. And additionally, there is one that leads over here for First Commerce Drive. Now, similar to what we always talk about, there isn't going to be probably a lot of foot traffic that leads into these specific areas, but there is no crosswalk that leads into First Commerce Drive. So that might be something for us to explore potentially as a comment, but there's nowhere really for even a crosswalk to kind of be developed in, just because it's all pretty much parking over here. So I don't know that it makes too much sense. And then for the actual buildings for B and C, there is the exterior paths of travel that lead in right from Addison Hall Circle. So there's no issues with that. So
Can you
that was, sorry, who's?
put one at like the top of A connection? Because like the rest of them like
There
have
is, yeah, from Addison Circle, there is the connection right there. But for anyone that's coming in, it looks like from like the south side over here, they would have to walk all the way around in order to access that piece.
Or they'll just walk on the driveway like most people would.
Yeah, like most people would, yeah. But in terms of comments, that was pretty much it. I put in the installation of tactile indicators for the staircases that are being provided for the industrial units. But other than that, I didn't have too many concerns, just because very basic build. I'll just go through the other pages just to go through them. But as you can see, for the interior, they're not showing anything. Last couple of drawings are your elevations, just so you get an idea of what the buildings look like themselves. but very, very basic site plan application. So that was it for my comments. Anything else from the committee? I didn't think this was going to be a chatty one.
No.
Okay, Rochelle, they're all yours.
Okay. All right. With no further comments, I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Okay, so on to item 7.5, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application OPA -2022-01 and ZBA 2022-01. This is submission number 1 for 15 Glen Steeple Trail. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew, and a second.
Haley.
Thanks, Haley. Okay, Matt, if you want to take the lead.
Alrighty, guys. So very, very complicated one here. We're going to be taking a look at 4 residential units. So I really thought about whether to bring this one to the committee or not, but I figured it doesn't hurt. So this will take quite literally 2 seconds. I had no comments for it, but I wanted to bring it by you guys regardless. I'd rather you guys tell me that there's no comments than just to make the assumption. So as you can see, there's basically just 4 proposed residential units being added in over here. They have a sidewalk in front of each of their homes that leads over to, it looks like Ridge Road. And this is, what is this, Glen Steeple Trail. So they have a sidewalk, but based on these drawings, it doesn't look like that sidewalk leads into any other exterior paths of travel. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with that area, whether that's correct or they just didn't include it because they're not working on those areas. But yeah, I had no comments on it regardless, because anything on the other side of Ridge or Glen Steeple, they're not in charge of it, right? They're not building anything over there. So there was no comments for me to have on that piece.
According to Google Maps, there's already a tactile pad at that intersection too.
Okay, yeah. So then
there's my comment gone.
Yeah, I figured this one was going to be pretty much a just show and tell kind of situation. Okey-dokes, then, yep, sounds like we're good. So Rochelle,
Okay.
that was like I said, easy one.
Okay, no further comments then. I'll go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Okay, item 7.6, our roundtable discussion regarding the Town of Aurora multi-year accessibility plan 2022 to 2026. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Haley.
Joanne,
Thanks, Haley. And Joanne, I'll use you for a second then. Okay, Matt, if you want to start us off.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, like I was mentioning earlier, while we're waiting for the transition of the new accessibility advisor to be starting with you guys, there will be a little bit of a halt on some of the initiatives that we're working on. So what I wanted to do, so that way I will leave this behind as information for the next individual coming into the role, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up as to what items I'm expecting as initiatives to be complete in 2022. So that way you guys are aware of it prior to being introduced to the new individual. So based on the items that we had, because we were waiting for the plan to be endorsed, we weren't able to go to capital for any of these items. So these aren't going to be any items with expense. So there shouldn't be any reason they don't get complete. So items to be complete in 2022 include establishment of employee resource groups, specifically to accessibility. So some in recreation, parks, so that way staff members are able to collaborate and actually speak about accessibility for any internal ideas that are kind of going around. There is the accessibility awareness campaign that we were obviously working on. So we wanted to push through, I know, another video, but unfortunately, while we're waiting for the next person to come in, that'll have to be on hold. But as soon as they come in, hopefully you guys are able to meet them in the June meeting to at least have that conversation. And then that way that can start in summertime and you guys are able to continue on with that awareness campaign. Establishment of, so we have our municipal election happening this year as well. So there will be a piece about creating an accessible plan for the election that's going to be happening in 2022. That's standard for municipalities. There's always a plan that's developed, so they'll have to be in charge of doing that, as well as doing site visits for the election coming around this year. For those of you that haven't kind of been following, there is going to be a ward system that's been being in place this year for the Aurora election. So it'll be a little bit different in terms of where people are going to be going in for their voting locations and what zones they're going to be a part of for the voting process. So you guys will see that obviously coming towards the fall time and how that kind of looks. Another piece as well is going to be the establishment of our partnership with secondary schools. So we have co-op students coming in with disabilities to work with the town of Aurora. So I want them to work on that and making sure those partnerships are established. That way we have co-op students either starting this year in fall, or at least that we're fully established, ready to go for the January. High school is February. When do they transition? Is it before Christmas or after? I don't remember. February, right? So then we could for sure start in for us. That would be semester 2 with the co-op students coming in there. I started work on a new policy. So there is an accessible parking policy. Our bylaws already match our neighboring municipalities. So Toronto, for example, has an accessible policy for their barrier-free parking. That includes like exemptions, right? Being able to be out on a road for 24 hours. The way our zoning bylaw is built, we kind of already match those standards, but based on just feedback from residents asking about those items, I wanted to develop a policy that directly highlights what that means for accessibility. So that'll be something that we actually put into writing and add to our accessibility page this year as well, just so people have easier access finding information about those pieces. Road reconstruction about Kennedy and Henderson is underway, right? So we've been talking about those APS systems being installed over there. So that will be occurring this year and might lead into 2023. So those are the 2 APS systems that are being installed. The designs are ready to go for those pieces. And we heard back from residents about Wells Street as well. So I'm going to ask them to actually start working on the design for Wells Street intersection for APS to be installed there, as well as we're going to look and explore into actual tactile plates. And actually, I don't know if you guys have seen this in other places. So there was a request for tactile plates to be added in as indication prior to the rail system for the GO train over there, just to let people know that they're approaching that area. So I'm going to add that in as a note as well for the future accessibility advisor to look into for 2023.
Another thing like Europe does with like crosswalks at rail crossings is they change the color of the streetlights in the area.
What do you mean? Can you expand on that?
The lights near rail tracks are a bluish tinge.
What's the benefit?
There's 2 benefits. One, it notifies certain types of individuals that are in the presence of a rail crossing.
Right.
2 is they have studies that have concluded that the blue light helps to reduce the number of suicides.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to write it down, but I've never seen that. So that's cool.
It's a big European thing, and the Europeans took it from the Japanese. So
I haven't seen it.
I was wondering whether or not it would be something for like individuals that with visual impairments, like if they're colorblind, like whether blue might be like an easier contrast to see versus red or anything along those lines. But now you have me intrigued and I want to look into this. So I'm going to be reading about this.
I've been to Europe and I don't remember seeing that.
it's in the Netherlands right now.
It's where?
Netherlands has it going on right now. In Delft,
Oh,
they've
do
done
they?
a bunch of studies.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Okay, I added that in. Thanks, Matthew.
You're welcome.
And then for a couple of like some of the smaller items, this has already happened. So we had like I was mentioning to you last time, replacement of a couple of the aquatic wheelchairs needed to go through. So we've already ordered those in. We're just waiting for the shipping of those. Sensory path is ready. All staff are aware. The design is ready to go in for the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. We've already contacted the vendor. I will see if somebody is willing to oversee the implementation after I'm gone. Otherwise, somebody's just going to have, we're going to have to wait for the new accessibility advisor to come in to continue with that, but it's all ready for them to go in. It's just kind of, you just want someone to oversee that portion. And then from our last meeting, I was mentioning the Aurora Senior Center ramp. We're just waiting still to hear back on the grant. Otherwise, we'll be doing the install of the Senior Center ramp this year as well. And the last two pieces is going to be continuation of, and this is going to be every year, the information and communication standard. So we've gotten quite a bit of documents done this year. I believe we still have an additional about $15,000 to $20,000 worth of work to continue for 2020 on remediation services. And then there will have to be additional funds that come in for 2023 and 2024 as this continues, right? Because PDFs are produced every year, right? So this will be an ongoing project for us. So these are all the items that I've already put down for the person that's going to be coming in to immediately start in. And there is obviously like little items that will have to be done as well through consultation of the Accessibility Advisory Committee as they progress through the year. So wanted to just table that for you guys to be aware of as information that I'm leaving behind for the next person to make sure that they kind of start and jump into making sure these projects are done, just because by the time the whole process occurs, it's going to be a couple of weeks, potentially months, right? So we don't want them to kind of come into summer, only have 6 months without knowing what to start on. So I want them to have them ready. But was there anything else? Those are the items that I've picked out that we've discussed for 2022. Is there anything else that you guys want written down for them to kind of be aware of in terms of the plan as little items to look into immediately? I can get that ready. So let me know. Okie dokes. So I think that's it for the accessibility plan. Like I said, this is going to be passed along to the next person. So Rochelle, that's it for that specific section.
Okay. All right. With no further comments or questions, I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that carries. All right, and now on to informational items. We have no informational items this evening. So on to adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Haley.
Thanks, Haley. And a second?
Joanne?
Thanks, Joanne. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries, and we are officially adjourned for April.
Amazing.